All right, welcome everybody. As you're dropping into the webinar, we'll get started in about 45 seconds. All right, welcome everybody. My name is Mike, and with me is Michelle. We are both senior learning leaders at Eduscape, professional development company. Today, we are here to talk to you about Robo Wunderkind. So speaking of, I also have Mark with me, who is the head of the North American sales, and he's joining us today to help facilitate our chat, to facilitate any questions that you might have throughout the 30-minute webinar. Today, we're going to be looking at a few different pieces when it comes to Robo Wunderkind. We did another webinar earlier that was, what is Robo Wunderkind? But today, we're going to be focusing on a slightly different lens, and that is the teacher lens. So thank you for being with us today. We know that as educators, there's a lot on your plate right now, planning and moving your instruction to online. So we are very happy that you're here with us today, and we're going to dive into the content. So what are we going to do today? Our agenda is we're going to look at Robo Wunderkind, talk about the story. Why was it created? What was the need that it's filling? Then we're going to look at the PD overview. So what professional development opportunities are available for educators across the country and world, as well as what is TeachFlow, and then which is a proprietary product of Eduscape, where our Robo Wunderkind Academy is housed. We're going to dive deeply into the Academy, talking about what you will walk away with by doing the Academy. And then finally, we'll spend about 5 to 10 minutes on Q&A at the end. So our learner outcomes for today, we're hoping that we're going to explain, not hoping, we are going to explain the professional development opportunities available for Robo. We're going to identify the learner outcomes for the Academy as a whole. And then we're going to review what some of that curriculum looks like and what that professional development looks like within this webinar. Now, a couple logistic pieces when it comes to technology. Please ask all questions in the chat. If we don't get to the questions for whatever reason, we will answer them via email later. Finally, just note that the webinar is being recorded. We're practicing good digital citizenship by telling you that, but the recording will also be available at later times on Robo Wunderkind's YouTube channel and beyond there. So with all of those technology pieces in mind, let's dive into the story of Robo Wunderkind.
Okay, so before we can even jump into what is story, we're going to take a look at this backstory of Robo Wunderkind from the lens of Miss Jones. So Miss Jones is a first grade teacher. Her class has a mix of students ranging from some who are emerging English language learners, some who have cognitive disabilities, and some who are just general education students. She has a wide range. Then Miss Jones is looking around the world around her, and she understands how coding is essential and a skill that's needed in today's society. However, she looks at all the unfriendly hardware, the bare electronics, the hundreds of lines of code, and she realizes that this is not child-friendly material for her students. It doesn't promote anything that would interest her students or give them the background that they need in order to build that 21st century skill. So, with that said, Robo Wunderkind changed the look of robotics to be child-friendly. So now Mrs. Jones can expose her students to coding. So ultrasonic sensors that now are rough-looking and robotic parts were changed to be more block-like. Now they're able to be more child-friendly and where children could potentially learn coding with kid-friendly robotic pieces. The company Robo Wunderkind was launched in 2017 with the mission to create and inspire a playful learning environment for all children to learn the 21st century skills. Robo Wunderkind is now located in 15 countries and offers successful educational content and robotics kits.
Absolutely. And for teachers like Mrs. Jones, we wanted to be able to prepare her to implement this amazing product that teaches kids so many things above and beyond coding. But how do you do that in your classroom? So let's dive first into the education kit, and so that you know what's available. So there are 2 apps available that you can actually code with Robo Wunderkind. The first one is RoboCode. That's your red logo. There, students are able to use the proprietary coding interface to test out code. So they build, test, and iterate, practicing those good STEM skills, those good coding skills, as well as all of those self-regulation skills. Then they can also use the Robo Live app. That's the blue app. The blue app actually allows students to code Robo live and in real time. So you have 2 options of how students can engage with the Robo Wunderkind modules. The modules are those little blocks that students can piece together to create creations of their own, whether it be a robot, a flashlight, a lighthouse. The sky is the limit, and their imaginations can run wild. This is what's included in the education kit. As you can see, there's a variety of blocks, wheels, connectors, sensors that typically look very industrial. They look like kid-friendly blocks. You also receive the disconnection tool to allow students to work on that fine motor skills of popping the pieces off, putting it together, and ultimately to facilitate the learning. You'll also notice that there are buttons and lights, and then that main block, that's the brain, is what connects to those apps so that students can code with the robots and their creations. So a variety of pieces. To some teachers, that might be really overwhelming. How do I use this in my content? How do I even use this? How do I facilitate the management? And how do I have my students know where to put it? How to put it together? Essentially, how can we prepare teachers to implement Robo Wunderkind into the classroom effectively? Then there's other options like makerspace connections. It's compatible with Lego. It's compatible with all of your makerspace construction paper. As you can see there, I think there's just some colored pencils. All of those pieces can fit together so that students can make what they want and discover and to really hone those 21st century skills. Whether they can read, whether they can speak English or not, the platform allows students to code the robot with visual platforms. So into what the Academy does for those teachers. The Academy allows learners to effectively implement Robo Wunderkind as a classroom technology tool. Now, we like to say tool because we use it as a learning tool, not just a product or it's something that we use for fun. Now, can it be used for that? Absolutely. But as educators, we want to know how can we use that tool to teach our math lesson, to teach our social studies lesson, or how to teach our science lesson. But what's great about the Academy is that we also focus on those pedagogical frameworks, how to plan with technology, as well as how do we support all of our learners, whether it be that they have cognitive or physical challenges, or whether it be just general education students that we want to give better access to. We also include a social emotional well-being component to our Academy. So let's look at some of the components within the Academy. First, these are our learner outcomes. By the end of going through the Academy, you'll have developed classroom management procedures, which are so important, especially when you're working with younger students. You'll have designed learning experiences that include STEM activities using backwards design and TPAC. You'll have practice programming with that Robo Code and Robo Live app, which I already showed you. So you'll actually walk away with a little bit of coding knowledge and skills so that you'll be able to teach your students. We have found as a professional development company that that's one of the biggest roadblocks for teachers is that they don't feel comfortable teaching a coding product because they don't know how to code themselves. So we cover some of the basics for you to help build that background knowledge. We'll also look at those computational thinking skills that help students problem solve, and those computational thinking skills align very nicely with the 21st century skills. We'll look at that when you're using the modules, Robo Code app, as well as the Robo Live app. Finally, we're going to look at the various ways that we can make the Robo Wunderkind modules and coding more accessible to your learners using the Universal Design for Learning, as well as the social emotional learning frameworks. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this now. So we actually have a bunch of options because we know that teachers need flexibility with time as well as districts when it comes to what they're purchasing. So one option is an academy in its fullest extent. It's 5 modules, each containing a variety of lessons. So although it's only 5 modules, I think we have around 27 to 30 lessons for you to go through to explore how to use Robo Wunderkind. But if you don't have the time for all of that, there are other options as well. We've broken up the academy such that if you want to just get started and start using Robo Wunderkind right away, you can use the Getting Started, which just focuses on module 1, 2, and 3. It's more what do the pieces do? How do I code with it? What classroom management do I need to take into consideration? When you're feeling ready to dive even deeper into planning lessons with it, with the tool, then you can use the Creating Classroom Experience with Robo Wunderkind E-Academy, which will allow you to think about what are those pedagogical frameworks? How do I take into consideration what I already have? And how can I start to implement Robo Wunderkind as a tool into my instruction? How is this done? Well, number one, the course has some very nice community features. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. It's multimedia instruction. So you're not just reading, you're not just watching videos, you're completing the work in a variety of ways. There's several different accessibility options, not just when it comes to technology, but also UDL. And again, I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. And it is all research-based. When I talk about community, I'm referring to the discussion post. As you go through the e-learning, you're able to post questions, post comments, post work, and get feedback from a community. You can even post your work to a gallery to allow other educators to not only comment and give you suggestions, but to also gain from your knowledge and your experience of what you learned with Robo Wunderkind. The multimedia instruction allows you to watch videos, read short articles, complete activities that are interactive, all within the platform. It's accessible on your mobile phone, on your computer, on a tablet, whatever you need. If you're on the go, you can access this e-learning. But what's even nicer is that we made it very UDL accessible, meaning there's closed captioning. The colors, the images that we use were very intentional, such that all learners can access it in a very meaningful and authentic way. Finally, all of the frameworks that we use pedagogically, social emotional learning, UDL, all of it is research-based and grounded in good practice. So when you walk away from this learning experience, you're able to confidently implement this tool into all of your instruction. Like I said earlier, TeachFlow is Eduscape's proprietary learning management system, and your learning management system is where that learning is occurring in a digital world. Like I just mentioned, there's multiple devices you can use this on. It's self-paced. We know that teachers have time, and have time at weird times, maybe 10 minutes before kids come into your classroom or 5 minutes before you have to make dinner. So it's completely self-paced for you to complete it whenever you would like. There is a professional learning community, like I've already mentioned, so that as you're putting in your discussion posts, as you're putting in your work, you're coming around other educators who are like-minded and also in the same boat as you that are getting ready to implement Robo Wunderkind into their classroom. Finally, there is an e-coaching possibility. So if you are going through as a school and you're about ready to implement it as an entire school, maybe you have an Eduscape learning leader helping you along the way, answering questions, facilitating that learning, and just keeping you together as a cohort so you can continue to build your community, continue to build your background knowledge, and continue to feel that confidence needed to implement the tool. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what these modules actually cover.
Okay, so for that first module, it's orientation. So regardless of which one that package you start with, no matter what, we walk you through how to use TeachFlow, all the features inside of it, and then of course, what are the objectives and the outcomes for the course so you become acquainted with it. Moving into module 2, that's where we start diving into is Robo Wunderkind. We go through opening the education box with you, showing you all the parts inside, showing you how they assemble together, and working through different classroom management techniques you may want to consider when bringing Robo Wunderkind into your classroom. Then we move into the next module, module 3, about Robo being your new classroom favorite tool. This is now where we introduce the coding aspect. So now since you can build with Robo, you can start using that makerspace capability. You can make these great things. Let's code them. Let's break down coding though into what's computational thinking, how can you use it in your classroom, not just for when you work with Robo Wunderkind, but for all subject areas. And then we're going to break down the coding experiences that you can have specifically with Robo Wunderkind. Then the next module, we start going into planning, designing, and building, and figuring out how to solve different problems from different STEM approaches. So we break down using problem-based learning and inquiry-based learning, and even the engineering design process with Robo Wunderkind, and how you can use that in different lessons. After that, we go into making sure that Robo Wunderkind is accessible for all learners. So at this point, you've already gotten a taste of what you can make with Robo Wunderkind. We start walking you through the lesson planning process with him. But now let's take into consideration the social emotional aspect, how Robo Wunderkind can help be utilized with the universal design for learning. And then, of course, making sure that all learners have that same learning experience where we support them, whether they have cognitive or physical challenges, and giving them that support where they need it. So we have some time now where we're here to answer the questions for you. If you have any questions about Robo Wunderkind, anything dealing with the kit, the e-learning itself, please let us know.
All right, so I see a question in here. I think, Michelle, you answered it, but I'm going to just ask it out for everybody. But it's, how well do these work for the K-1 students who have little to no experience? It is a great question. And hi, Kathy. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. But it is geared towards that age group, which is why Robo really took that opportunity and realized that these kids are not able to they don't have a lot of tools accessible to them that are friendly that students can build. So Robo stepped into that space so that kids can learn how to put the blocks together. So it's something they're already familiar with. And then the coding piece of it, because it is visual coding, it is a lot easier than having to use text-based coding. So what's nice about it is that kids are able to, whether they don't speak English, maybe they're English language learners, or maybe they just don't know how to read at all, they're able to literally drag and drop and move with their finger the coding pieces. And then they hit play and they see what happens. What's also nice about it is that the app is is connected to the main block by Bluetooth. So when your internet goes down in schools, because we know it often does, you're still able to have those experiences with your students.
There was another question that also just came up, and I said I was going to answer it live, is how many students per kit? So I recommend at least 2 to 3 students where they can collaborate and build together, because you do need that main block that Mike was mentioning to really code the build. That is where you'll end up running into some issues if you wanted them to work individually on assignments, because they all would need a main block then. But Robo Wunderkind is a great collaboration tool, teaches students great skills that they need to learn how to work with each other in this engaging way. So this is a great opportunity for them to do that.
Absolutely. And I would also ask, like, what ultimately are the goals? If you're using it in station time and you want to have students be one-to-one with it, then take that into consideration. If you're looking to do whole class instruction with the tool, then maybe, like Michelle said, 2 to 3 students, so that students also realize that coding is a collaborative activity. A lot of times when we see images of people coding, it's them with the computer and it's a very isolated activity. But in many ways, coding requires so many skills that collaboration can support. For example, those problem-solving skills, those trial and error, and that testing and iteration. So bringing all of your students together around the product and the tool as much as possible, we would always recommend. And because it is an app, you are also able to mirror it onto your interactive display. So if you have an interactive whiteboard, students can come together and actually manipulate that, bringing all of the students around that coding process. So one of the questions is the Academy available? Yes, it's available. It's done and it's ready to go. So I see some questions about how do I access it. I'm going to encourage you to, Mark will reach out to you to talk to you about all of these different, these questions as it pertains to getting into the academy, getting started with it. But I'll have him reach out to you with email. But those are great questions. It is accessible. It is ready now. So whenever you are ready to jump into it, you're absolutely able to do so. Let's see. So Kathy, I would also ask, how old is your crew? So if you have really young kids, I would probably say about 2 kids or so to a kid. If they're a little bit older and know those norms of sharing, then maybe you could get away with 3 or so. It also really depends on, do you have other accessible tools like Legos where kids can kind of work together? Do you have makerspace materials? So I would ultimately say is if you have it in the budget to do more tools to less kids, I would do that. But typically we say about 2 to 3 students per product. Any other questions? I'll just wait just a couple more seconds if you do. Also, you should know that there is a ton of pre-made content that Robo Wunderkind has accessible on their website. What's fantastic about that is if you're kind of navigating these waters, checking it out, I would go onto their website and look through that curriculum. The reason I say that is that they've created a variety of curriculum that allows you to grab and go, which is really nice. So in our modules and in our e-academy, we do actually kind of dive into that content so that if you don't know where to start, you can start there. And if you're starting to feel that you're ready to integrate the tool into other areas that are meeting your specific needs of meeting your standards, for example, whether it be the TEKS or whether it be Common Core, whatever it might be, you're able to use that. Yes, thank you. Work in pairs. That's a good point too. That's exactly what I was talking about. Thank you.
But Mike, you're bringing up a good point about making using their pre-made stuff if you're not ready yet, especially if this is your first tech tool that you're using in your classroom. This is a great place for you to go onto the Robo Wunderkind website, check out their free content, gather ideas, use or don't use what they have, just so you know how to utilize Robo in your classroom. And then as you feel more comfortable, our e-academy, which you can ask Mark about, and he'll be in contact with you about it. That has the more comprehensive, now what to do with Robo, let's see what we can do in your classroom based on what you already have.
Perfect. And Mark just dropped the YouTube video for the last webinar if you wanted to share that out with your colleagues or if you wanted to watch it yourself. Mark also dropped in his email address. So when it comes to the link for the e-learning, if you want to find out more about pricing, whatever that might be, I encourage you to reach out to Mark. He's a sales guy in North America, but he's very, very supportive of educators. He understands educators, so he'll be able to help you along the way. But teachers, we know, and educators, we know you have a lot on your plates right now. So we do want to respect your time. We will hang around here for a couple more minutes if you have any questions, but if you don't, thank you so much for joining us. We know that you have a lot on your plate right now, and we know that you're doing a good job. So keep doing it, and we appreciate all that you do. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll hang around for a couple more seconds if you want to ask us questions. It's almost like the modules are talking through Mark. Yeah. Like Robo Wunderkind is speaking to us through the chat.
That's what it kind of looks like.
Thank you all.